Welcome to Dreamscribe, your companion on the journey to peaceful sleep. Before you drift off, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps this calming community grow. Where in the world are you tuning in from? Take a deep breath, get cozy, and let the tranquility of the moment guide you into rest. The road stretched endlessly into the wilderness, the dense tree line on either side swallowing the last rays of the setting sun. Ethan adjusted his grip on the steering wheel, eyes scanning the dimming horizon. The gas gauge hovered just above empty, and there hadn't been a sign of civilization for miles. "We need to stop soon," Laura murmured, rubbing her tired eyes. "I'm not sleeping in this van on the side of the road again." "Look up a campsite," Ethan said. Ben, scrolling on his phone, frowned. "There's one up ahead. Says it's called Pine Hollow RV Park." "But," he hesitated. "There's no reviews. No photos. Just a pin on the map." Sophia glanced up from the back seat. "That's weird. Who doesn't review a campground? It's either really good or really bad," Ben muttered. Ethan sighed. "We don't have a choice. It's this or we sleep in a ditch." As they turned off the main road, a narrow gravel path led them deeper into the woods. The tires crunched over loose stones, dust swirling in the headlights. Then the entrance appeared, a rusted metal sign barely visible through the overgrown brush. Pine Hollow RV Park. It looked abandoned. No lights. No movement. Just rows of RVs, sitting eerily still under the starless sky. Laura shifted uncomfortably. "Are we sure this place is open?" Ethan forced a chuckle. "Well, there's no closed sign." Ben exhaled. "This place is giving me major horror movie vibes." Sophia peered out the window. One of the RVs had a door slightly open. A curtain fluttered inside, moving though there was no wind. "We should go," she whispered. Ethan ignored her. He pulled into a clearing near the center of the park. The air felt thick, unnaturally still. No distant hum of insects, no rustling leaves, just silence. They stepped out cautiously, stretching their legs. The RV park smelled like damp wood and something faintly metallic. "Weird," Ben muttered. "It's like people just left." Laura walked toward a faded guest book kiosk near the main office, flipping through its dusty pages. "Last signed entry was 30 years ago," she frowned. "That can't be right." Sophia hugged herself. "I don't like this place." Ben smirked. "Scared of a few old RVs?" Then, a sound. Distant. Muffled. A radio crackled to life inside one of the abandoned RVs, its glow barely visible through the grimy window. The voice was faint, warbled with static. "Help us." Laura stepped back, her breath hitching. "Did you hear that?" Ethan stared at the RV. "Maybe it's just an old transmission." Ben shook his head. "That wasn't just static." Sophia turned toward another RV, noticing something etched into the metal siding. Deep scratches, like claw marks. "Guys, look at this," she whispered, tracing the jagged lines. The markings weren't random. They formed words. "Don't stay the night." The RV park isn't abandoned. It's haunted by the echoes of those who never left. This sets up, too. Setting the scene, building atmosphere. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. 2. Setting the scene, building atmosphere. The stillness of the RV park felt unnatural. The air was thick, charged with a quiet unease that no one wanted to acknowledge. The rows of abandoned RVs stood like silent sentinels, their darkened windows reflecting nothing but shadows. The distant hum of the van's cooling engine was the only sound in the night. Ethan stepped forward, his boots crunching against the loose gravel. "Let's check out the office. Maybe there's some kind of explanation for why it looks so deserted." Laura hesitated, glancing back at their own RV. "Maybe we should just sleep and leave first thing in the morning." Ben scoffed. "Come on, it's an empty campground, not a haunted house." Sophia wasn't convinced. She wrapped her arms around herself. "It just doesn't feel right." The wooden door to the main office creaked open at Ethan's touch. Dust hung thick in the air, illuminated by the faint glow of their flashlights. A rotting ledger book sat open on the counter, its pages yellowed and curling. Ben ran a finger down the list of names. Last registered guests were, in 1993? His brows furrowed. "That doesn't make sense." Sophia peered over his shoulder. "But the place doesn't look that old. It's like people just," she hesitated, vanished. A sudden rustling sound made them all freeze. "What was that?" Laura whispered. Ethan's flashlight beam swept across the back room, illuminating a chair that was slowly rocking on its own. Back outside, the silence deepened. The wind had stopped, leaving the trees motionless. Sophia's breath hitched. Look at the RVs. She pointed toward the rows of vehicles. A moment ago, they had seemed randomly arranged, but now they were positioned perfectly aligned, forming a straight path down the center of the park. Ben swallowed hard. Did they move? Laura shook her head. That's impossible. We would have heard something. Yet, the eerie precision of their alignment suggested otherwise. The distant crackle of a radio broke the silence. It came from an RV at the far end of the park, its windows coated in dust. The dim blue glow of an old radio flickered inside. Someone's here, Ethan murmured, stepping forward. Don't, Sophia warned. Ben ignored her, inching closer. The static twisted, forming garbled words. Still here, never left. The voice was distorted, like it had been played 1,000 times before. Laura clutched Ethan's sleeve. Something isn't right. We need to go. Ben exhaled sharply. We need answers. Sophia stared at the guest book in her hands. Her fingers trembled as she flipped the pages until she found their own names, written in faded ink. The date beside them, tonight. She gasped, dropping the book. The lights in the RVs flickered on all at once. And then footsteps. Multiple sets of footsteps, moving toward them. The RV park isn't just abandoned. It's trapped in a loop, and they are the newest residents. This sets up 3. Rising tension, suspense begins. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The footsteps grew louder, approaching from multiple directions. Ethan's breath quickened as he turned in a slow circle. There's no one here, right? Sophia's fingers dug into her arms. Then who's walking toward us? Ben held up his flashlight and pointed it toward the nearest RV. The beam cut through the thick darkness, illuminating a shape, a shadowy figure standing just outside the door. Then another, and another. Silent silhouettes, standing between the RVs, watching. The group backed toward their own RV, their bodies tense. Then, the radio crackled again. The same distorted voice from earlier, but this time it was clearer. They stayed, now you will too. The air turned heavy, thick with an invisible force pressing against their chests. A distant scream echoed through the lot. Laura gasped. Did you hear that? Ben's face was pale. It came from inside one of the RVs. As Ethan reached for the door handle of their RV, his fingers passed through it. He yanked his hand back, heart hammering. What the hell? Sophia's eyes widened. Try again. He did. This time, the handle felt solid. The moment he twisted it, the door flung open on its own. Inside, the interior lights flickered violently. The once empty space was now occupied. Figures sat at the table, stood in the hall, loomed near the bed, shadows of people who had been there before. Ben grabbed Sophia's arm. We're leaving. Now. The radio inside their RV switched stations on its own. The static shifted, forming words. You can't leave. You're already part of it. Laura took a step back, her foot crunching something beneath it. She looked down. A Polaroid photograph. It showed their group, standing at the entrance of Pine Hollow RV Park. Ben's voice cracked. We never took this picture. Sophia picked it up with trembling hands, flipping it over. Scrawled on the back in smeared ink. We tried to leave too. Ethan pulled out his phone, his hands shaking as he checked the time. 2:14 a.m. He locked the screen, exhaled, and checked again. 2:14 a.m. Again. 2:14 a.m. Time's not moving, he whispered. We're stuck. The wind picked up, but instead of rustling leaves, it carried whispers. Then, one of the shadowy figures took a step forward, and another, until they were rushing toward them. The RV park is not just haunted, it's a trap, and time itself has stopped for them. This sets up for climactic revelation. The mystery unfolds. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The shadows surged forward, a silent stampede of distorted figures, their forms shifting like smoke caught in an unseen wind. Ethan yanked Laura back, his heart hammering in his chest. Run! They sprinted toward their RV, but the ground beneath them felt different, softer, less real. Their feet barely made an impact, like they were running across a film of water instead of solid dirt. Ben gasped between breaths. It's not just the park that's trapped. We're fading too. Sophia risked a glance behind them. The figures weren't chasing them anymore. They had stopped, watching, waiting, as if they had seen this before. They slammed the RV door shut behind them, their chests heaving. The radio inside let out a static-laced wheeze, then went silent. Laura, hands shaking, flipped open the guest book they had found earlier. Maybe there's a way out, she whispered. The ink on the pages began to shift, letters rearranging themselves before their eyes. New words formed, written in a frantic, jagged hand. You can't leave until you know the truth. The wind outside rattled the RV violently, as if the park itself had heard them. Ben turned toward the window. The glass had fogged over, but as he reached to wipe it clean, his own reflection moved before he did. His breath hitched. Guys! The reflection of their group stood in the window, but they weren't mirroring their movements. The other Ethan, the other Laura, the other Sophia, they were smiling. The real Laura let out a soft gasp. That's not us. The reflections raised their hands in unison and pressed their palms against the glass. Cracks formed from the inside. The guest book flipped to the last page on its own. A list of names, hundreds, maybe more, were scrawled in the same erratic handwriting. Near the bottom were 4 familiar names. Ethan, Laura, Ben, Sophia. A final message had been etched beneath them. We arrived. We tried to leave. We never did. Sophia stumbled back, shaking her head. No, this isn't happening. Ethan's voice was hollow. It's already happened. Over and over. We're just the latest ones. Outside, the figures took another step forward. The radio sparked, a new voice cutting through the static, one they recognized. Their own voices. A playback of their own conversations from earlier in the night echoed back at them. We need to stop soon. Look up a campsite. It's either really good or really bad. Ben's hands balled into fists. We were never supposed to leave. We were supposed to stay, to become part of the echoes. Laura swallowed hard. Then how do we break it? Ethan's gaze darted back to the guest book. We write something new. The RV park isn't just haunted. It's a looping nightmare, repeating itself with every new group that arrives. Now they have one chance to break the cycle, but will the park let them? This sets up 5. Climax, high-stakes action. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The walls of the RV groaned, the windows vibrating as if something massive was pressing in from the outside. The air had grown dense, suffocating, as if the entire park was holding its breath. Ethan grabbed the guest book with trembling hands. If we write something new, we break the loop. Laura's voice wavered. And if it doesn't work? The shadowy figures outside stepped closer. Their smiles widened, unnatural and wrong. Waiting. Expecting. Ben's grip on the flashlight tightened. Then we don't get another chance. Sophia rummaged through the RV cabinets, searching for a pen. There has to be one in here. The moment her fingers brushed against something, a voice whispered from the darkness inside the drawer. We wrote too. It didn't save us. Sophia yanked her hand back, heart hammering. But the pen was there, resting at the bottom of the drawer. She grabbed it. Ethan flipped to the last page of the guest book, his name still etched into the paper. His breathing turned shallow as he pressed the pen to the page. We leave. We survive. The moment the ink touched the paper, the air shuddered. The lights inside the RV exploded, plunging them into darkness. The shadows outside lunged, not walking now but gliding toward them, their hands stretching like smoke, fingers sharpening into claws. Laura screamed as one of the figures phased through the door, its presence like a wave of icy pressure crashing into the room. Ben swung his flashlight at it. The beam passed straight through. Nothing's working, he shouted. Sophia grabbed Ethan's arm. Keep writing. Ethan's hands shook violently, but he forced the pen down, scrawling faster. This place does not hold us. We are real. We are leaving. The shadows screeched, their forms splintering, as if the words themselves were tearing into them. The guest book erupted into flames. The fire spread unnaturally fast, not consuming the pages, but burning away the ink. Their names disappeared. The entire RV park shook. The rows of abandoned RVs blinked in and out of existence, shifting between solid and transparent. The figures outside screamed, not in rage, but in fear. Laura grabbed Ethan's hand. It's working. The world tilted, the park itself seemingly folding inward, as if it were trying to swallow them whole before they could leave. Run! Sophia shrieked. They bolted from the RV, racing toward the road. The air behind them rippled, the whispers turning into an unnatural, deafening roar. Ben stumbled, falling to his knees. Ethan turned back, grabbing him just as the ground behind them collapsed into nothingness. Sophia gasped. The whole park is disappearing. The entrance sign flickered, the words Pine Hollow RV Park vanishing like smoke. They reached their van, hands fumbling for the keys. Ethan yanked the door open and jumped into the driver's seat, his fingers shaking as he jammed the key into the ignition. Please, please, please. The engine roared to life. They sped off into the night, tires kicking up dust and debris as the park behind them collapsed into darkness. They made it out. Or did they? The park is gone, but something still doesn't feel right. This sets up 6. Resolution, lingering mystery. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The van sped down the deserted road, the last remnants of Pine Hollow RV Park fading in the rearview mirror. The air inside was thick with silence, the only sound the rhythmic hum of the engine and their uneven breathing. Ethan gripped the wheel, his knuckles white. Tell me we're really out. Laura checked her phone. No signal. She tried to remember when she last had bars. I don't know. Sophia stared at the road ahead, her voice hollow. It's gone. It disappeared. Ben sat in the back, hands trembling as he turned the guest book over in his lap. The pages were blank. Everything we wrote, he whispered. It's erased. Like we were never there. Ethan's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. For a moment, he swore he saw something in the back seat. Just a flicker, a shadow where there shouldn't be one. He blinked, and it was gone. Guys, his voice wavered. Did anyone else see that? Sophia didn't look at him. Don't say it. Don't acknowledge it. Ben exhaled shakily. What if we didn't actually escape? What if? Laura cut him off. We did. We have to believe that. The road stretched ahead, endless and dark. A green highway sign materialized from the darkness up ahead. Pine Hollow RV Park, 2 miles. Sophia's stomach dropped. No, that's impossible. Ben turned in his seat, his face pale. We left it behind. We watched it disappear. Ethan slowed the van. Do we turn around? Laura shook her head violently. No. No way. Keep driving. The headlights flickered. The radio crackled to life with a static-laced voice. You can't leave. Ethan slammed the radio off. We're not playing this game. But as they passed the sign, the landscape didn't change. The trees were the same. The road was the same. The air was too still. Laura squeezed her eyes shut. What if we never left? Sophia turned to the back window. The darkness behind them seemed to pulse, stretching into the road itself. Then a new sound emerged. The hum of an engine. A set of headlights appeared in the distance. Ben's breath hitched. Guys, someone's behind us. They all turned to look. A van, identical to theirs, following closely. Ethan's hands tightened on the wheel. This isn't real. The van behind them flickered. There, then gone, then closer than before. Laura grabbed his arm. Drive faster. But as Ethan pressed the gas pedal, the van ahead of them flickered into view. A second highway sign passed. Pine Hollow RV Park, 1 mile. Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. It's looping. We're stuck. The radio crackled again. You never left. The screen fades to black. This resolution, lingering mystery, cements echoes of the RV park as a terrifying, reality-warping horror story that never truly ends. Let me know if you'd like refinements, or if you're ready for the next nightmare. Story number 2. The hum of the RV's tires against the highway had become a soothing lullaby, a steady rhythm in the quiet night. Ryan stirred awake, his body stiff from the cramped sleeping space in the back. He rubbed his eyes and sat up, frowning as a sense of unease crept over him. Something felt off. The engine purred softly, the dashboard lights casting a dim glow through the front cabin. The road outside was unfamiliar, lined with towering pine trees that hadn't been there when they parked for the night. Ryan's stomach twisted. He turned toward the driver's seat. It was empty. His breath hitched. Guys! No answer. His voice sounded small in the stillness. Heart pounding, he scrambled toward the front, gripping the wheel to steady himself. The speedometer read 60 miles per hour. The RV was in motion, with no one driving it. Ryan's shaking hands grabbed the wheel, trying to turn it. It wouldn't budge. The gas pedal was pressed down, though there was no foot on it. Jess! Mark! Olivia! He shouted, turning toward the sleeping area. One by one, they stirred, groggy and confused. Olivia blinked at him, rubbing her temples. What's wrong? The RV is driving itself. Mark snorted. Dude, what? He stretched and sat up, peering at the dashboard. His face paled. Okay, what the hell? Jess grabbed her phone, turning on the GPS. That's impossible, she mumbled. But when she looked at the screen, her hands went still. What is it? Ryan asked. Jess's voice was barely a whisper. We're over 100 miles from where we parked last night. Ryan forced himself to breathe. Someone must have been awake. Maybe one of us. No, Olivia interrupted. I would have heard it. We all would have. Mark ran a hand through his hair. Maybe someone broke in and drove us here? Jess frowned. Then where are they now? A silence settled between them. Something wasn't right. Ryan hesitated before reaching for the ignition. He turned the key. The RV didn't stop. He yanked at the gear shift. It wouldn't move. The headlights flickered, and for the briefest moment, the dashboard screen showed something impossible. Not a map. Not the fuel gauge. A pulse. A slow, rhythmic pulse. Something is controlling the RV, and it's taking them somewhere. This sets up, too. Setting the scene, building atmosphere. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The night pressed in around them, thick and impenetrable. Outside the RV's windshield, the road stretched endlessly ahead, flanked by darkened trees that blurred into shadowy walls. The sky was overcast, the moon a faint smudge behind heavy clouds, offering no relief from the suffocating darkness. Ryan sat in the driver's seat, his hands hovering just above the wheel, as if daring himself to touch it. He hadn't yet. The RV continued its steady, unnatural glide through the night. Unmanned. Unstoppable. Jess shivered, pulling her jacket tight around her shoulders. Does it feel colder to anyone else? Mark checked the dashboard. Temperature's the same. But yeah, it does. A low hum vibrated beneath their feet, a sensation more felt than heard. The RV wasn't just moving. It was alive. Jess stared at the GPS, her brows furrowing. This map makes no sense. Look at this. Ryan and Olivia leaned in. The screen displayed a looping road with no name, no intersections, just a continuous spiral. That's not possible, Olivia whispered. Ryan exhaled sharply. We should have hit a town by now. We should have seen another car, a gas station, something. But there's nothing. Mark flipped through a paper map they had stored in the glove compartment. The road they were on didn't exist. Jess stared at the GPS, her brows furrowing. This map makes no sense. Look at this. Ryan and Olivia leaned in. The screen displayed a looping road with no name, no intersections, just a continuous spiral. That's not possible, Olivia whispered. Ryan exhaled sharply. We should have hit a town by now. We should have seen another car, a gas station, something. But there's nothing. Mark flipped through a paper map they had stored in the glove compartment. The road they were on didn't exist. A strange, metallic scent filled the RV, sharp and out of place. Olivia wrinkled her nose. Does anyone else smell that? Like rust? Ryan inhaled deeply, his stomach nodding. It smelled like blood. The walls of the RV groaned, the soft creak of shifting metal breaking the tense silence. The vehicle shouldn't have been making any noise, but it was, like it was adjusting to them. Jess ran her fingers along the fabric of the seat cushions. They were damp. Why does it feel wet in here? She whispered. No one answered. A sudden gust of air exhaled from the vents, though no one had touched the controls. The cool draft carried something with it, a whisper. Soft, distant, indistinct. Mark stiffened. Tell me you guys heard that. They all nodded, not daring to breathe. The whispering grew stronger, still unintelligible, but layered, multiple voices overlapping, rising and falling in eerie sync. Then, the radio switched on by itself. Static flooded the cabin. Through the distortion, a voice cut through. Why did you come back? Jess turned to look outside, hoping, praying, for signs of civilization. But the trees weren't trees anymore. They were shapes. Figures. Dark, elongated figures standing motionless between the trunks, barely visible through the thick night. Watching, her breath caught in her throat. We need to stop. We need to get out of here. Ryan's grip on the dashboard tightened. You think I haven't tried? It won't stop. Jess looked back outside. The figures were closer. Mark reached for the emergency exit latch near the back. The second his fingers touched the handle, the entire RV jerked violently. The lights flickered. The whispering turned into screams. Ryan struggled to keep his balance. It doesn't want us to leave. A sound thumped from the roof. Heavy, like something had landed on top of them. Then, a single set of footsteps, walking toward the front. The RV isn't just moving on its own, it's changing. It's leading them somewhere, and something is inside with them. This sets up 3. Rising tension, suspense begins. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The footsteps overhead stopped. Silence settled over the RV like a thick, suffocating blanket. No one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the tires gliding over the pavement, though none of them could remember the last time they saw another car. Then, a sudden, sharp knock on the roof. Jess clapped a hand over her mouth to muffle a scream. Ryan's fingers dug into the wheel, his breath coming in ragged gasps. There's no way, he muttered. There's no way something's up there. But Mark, gripping the nearest seat, shook his head. We all heard it. There's something with us. The knock came again. Louder. More insistent. Ryan swallowed hard and forced himself to glance at the rearview mirror. For a fraction of a second, he saw it. A figure. Dark. Featureless. Sitting in the back of the RV. His body seized in terror. He turned to look directly, but nothing. Just empty seats. Ryan. Olivia's voice trembled. What did you see? His throat was too dry to speak. But they all knew. They weren't alone. The radio crackled, the static warping and twisting until it formed a voice. You shouldn't be here. The words came slow, deliberate. Not a warning, an accusation. Jess scrambled to turn the radio off, but the dial wouldn't budge. The voice continued, overlapping itself, as if multiple people were whispering the same thing at once. You brought this on yourselves. Then a chilling pause. A breath. You should have never stopped. Jess's hands shook as she stared at the GPS. It changed again. Ryan risked a glance. The road no longer had a destination. Just a pulsing, shifting red that moved forward, endlessly. No towns. No landmarks. No escape. That wasn't like that before, Mark whispered. We had a route. It had an end. Olivia scrolled through the trip history. Every past location was wiped. The RV didn't just move on its own. It had erased where they had been. Jess's voice was barely above a whisper. Look outside. Ryan didn't want to, but he did. The dark figures in the trees were closer now. Before, they had been motionless, hidden among the branches. Now, they were standing at the edge of the road, facing the RV, watching, waiting. One of them twitched. A sharp, unnatural movement, like something testing its ability to move. Then, as one, they stepped forward. We have to stop, Olivia shrieked. We need to get out of here. Ryan slammed his foot on the brake. Nothing happened. The pedal was stiff, unmoving. The steering wheel wouldn't turn. The locks on the doors clicked shut on their own. The RV wasn't letting them leave. Mark pulled at the emergency exit. It wouldn't budge. The whispering from the vents grew louder, words bleeding together in a chorus of indecipherable voices. Then the figure in the back seat spoke. Keep driving. The RV isn't just haunted. It's a prison on wheels, controlled by something unseen. And now, it's taking them where it wants to go. This sets up for climactic revelation. The mystery unfolds. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The RV's headlights flickered violently, casting jagged shadows against the endless road ahead. The whispering voices from the vents surged into a distorted, incomprehensible chorus. Ryan gritted his teeth, gripping the wheel tighter, feeling the pulse beneath his fingers, a heartbeat thrumming through the dashboard. The RV was alive. It's taking us somewhere, Olivia gasped, her eyes darting to the GPS screen, which now displayed a single word. Home. Jess clutched her head. What does that mean? Who's home? Mark, pale and shaking, turned from the window. Look outside. The endless forest had vanished. In its place was a road that spiraled inward, looping like a snake coiling around its prey. It wasn't a highway. It wasn't even real pavement. It looked like flesh, pulsing under the headlights. We're not on Earth anymore, Mark whispered. Ryan's knuckles turned white. We have to stop this thing. He slammed the brakes. The RV didn't stop. Instead, the speedometer ticked higher. The air grew thick, as if the oxygen itself had been replaced by something heavier. The whispering in the vents became one voice, deep and resonant. You came back. Ryan's blood ran cold. Back? What do you mean? The radio crackled. A different voice, his own. You were always meant to return. The screen of the GPS flickered, revealing a grainy, distorted image. A younger version of Ryan, sitting in the same driver's seat. Eyes closed, mouth moving in a silent scream. The realization slammed into him like a freight train. I've been here before. Olivia grabbed his arm. Ryan, what are you saying? His breathing was ragged. This isn't our first trip. This thing, this place, it's been calling me back. Jess pointed at the windshield, her face drained of color. Then why do I see myself out there? Outside, standing along the twisted road, were duplicates of them. Motionless. Watching. Waiting. Each version of themselves had empty eyes and wide, frozen smiles. We're not the first us to be here, Mark choked out. And we won't be the last. The walls of the RV shifted, as if something inside them was moving. Breathing. Ryan's memories fractured, rewinding like an old VHS tape. Flashes of previous trips. The same RV. The same road. Each time, they never made it out. This thing feeds on us, Ryan gasped. On our fear, our memories. Every time we think we're leaving, we're just starting over. Jess's voice wavered. Then how do we stop it? The voice in the radio laughed, a deep, inhuman sound. You don't. They now know the horrifying truth. They've been trapped in this nightmare before. But can they break the cycle before the RV erases them completely? This sets up 5. Climax, high-stakes action. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The RV lurched forward, its engine roaring like a beast awakened. The speedometer redlined, pushing past 80 miles per hour, then 90. The twisted road ahead stretched into oblivion, swallowing everything beyond the headlights. Ryan gripped the wheel. We have to get out of this loop, now. Mark braced himself against the dashboard. How? We can't stop, we can't turn back. Jess pointed at the GPS, which flashed erratically, displaying coordinates that constantly shifted. One word pulsed on the screen. Jump. The radio screeched, voices overlapping in a chorus of agony. Stay. You can't leave. You were chosen. The walls of the RV flexed, warping like something inside was pressing outward. The whispering turned into screams, shrill and relentless. Then, the windows shattered inward. Shards of glass flew as shadowed hands reached through the broken windows, grasping at them with elongated fingers. Olivia screamed, kicking away a hand that nearly wrapped around her wrist. It's pulling us in, she cried. Ryan made a split-second decision. We jump. Now. The road ahead twisted into something unrecognizable, a gaping void. Beyond it, Ryan glimpsed something, a glimpse of reality, a flicker of the real world beyond this nightmare. Mark was the first to move. Go! One by one, they hurled themselves out of the speeding RV. Ryan felt the pull of the entity, the RV resisting their escape. The wind howled, and for a moment, he wasn't sure if he had jumped or been dragged into nothingness. Then, they hit the ground hard, rolling over pavement. Their skin burned from the rough landing, their lungs heaving for breath. The RV kept going, its headlights fading into the darkness. Then it was gone. A void of silence settled over them. Jess, gasping, looked around. Did we make it? Ryan, dazed, looked up at the sky. The moon hung exactly where it had been when they first got trapped. His stomach sank. I don't think it's over. They escaped the RV, but did they escape the loop? Something is still wrong. This sets up 6. Resolution, lingering mystery. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The night was still. The 4 of them lay sprawled on the cold asphalt, breathless, bruised, and shaken. Olivia coughed, rolling onto her side, her limbs trembling. The silence was deafening after the chaos of their escape. Ryan pushed himself up onto his elbows, eyes scanning the empty highway. The RV was gone, completely, utterly gone. There were no taillights in the distance, no lingering hum of an engine. Just darkness. Jess sat up, holding her scraped arm. We made it, right? No one answered. Mark checked his phone. No signal. We're on a highway. There should be signal, Olivia murmured, rubbing her arms as if trying to shake off the chill that had settled in her bones. Ryan turned toward the road sign up ahead. His stomach twisted. It read, Welcome to Pine Hollow. Jess's brow furrowed. That's where we started. Mark stood abruptly. That's impossible. We jumped. We were in that thing for hours. We should be states away by now. Ryan's fingers dug into his scalp. No. This isn't right. The wind picked up, rustling through the trees lining the roadside. Something about the air felt off. Then Olivia gasped. Guys, look at the road. They followed her shaking finger. The pavement wasn't worn, cracked, or littered with debris. It was untouched, pristine, like no vehicle had ever driven on it before. Mark's breath hitched. This road doesn't exist. A flickering glow from the distance caught Ryan's eye. At first, he thought it was a street lamp, but as it moved closer, he realized it was headlights. An RV's headlights. Olivia grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his skin. No, we left it. We saw it disappear. But as the vehicle grew closer, its shape became clearer. Jess let out a strangled noise. That's us. Through the windshield, they saw themselves, sitting inside, blank expressions on their faces, staring straight ahead. Ryan stumbled back. We never escaped. We just... The radio in Mark's pocket crackled to life. Static. Then their own voices. A whisper, slow and distorted. Keep driving. Their reflections in the RV's windows turned to look at them. The screen fades to black. This resolution, lingering mystery, cements Sleep Drive as a haunting, mind-bending horror story that never truly ends. Let me know if you'd like refinements, or if you're ready for the next nightmare. Story number 3. The neon, open sign flickered erratically, buzzing in the silence of the deserted highway. The gas station stood alone, a relic of another era. Faded paint peeling from its walls, a single rusted pump standing like a sentinel in the dim glow of the station's lone overhead light. Jake pulled the RV into the lot, gravel crunching beneath the tires. The road behind them was an endless stretch of nothingness, swallowed by darkness. Finally, Riley exhaled from the passenger seat, stretching her arms. I thought we'd never find a stop. Olivia peered out the window. Why is no one else here? This is the only station for miles. Sam, lounging in the back, smirked. That's why we're special, Liv. We get exclusive service. The joke didn't land. Something about this place felt off. Jake killed the engine. Silence swallowed them whole. No wind. No distant hum of passing cars. Not even the chirp of insects. Just silence. Riley frowned. Do you hear that? Hear what? Jake asked. Exactly. The four of them stepped out hesitantly, the air suddenly thick with the scent of oil and rust. A lone attendant stood behind the counter inside, watching them. Tall, too thin, his skin sallow under the buzzing fluorescence. He made no move to acknowledge them, his eyes locked onto their RV instead. Jake grabbed the pump nozzle, flipping the switch. Nothing. The pump was dead. Inside the station, the attendant finally moved, raising one bony hand. He gestured toward the farthest pump. Try that one. His voice was too soft, as if it came from somewhere deeper in his throat. Jake hesitated, then shrugged, moving to the other pump. This time, the gas flowed. Sam leaned against the RV, lighting a cigarette. This place gives me the creeps. Let's hurry up. Olivia wandered toward the convenience store's window. The inside shelves were mostly empty, save for dusty cans and expired snacks. Then, she saw something carved into the wood of the door. A symbol. Sharp, jagged, like clawed handwriting. Guys, Olivia called out. Come look at this. Riley and Sam joined her, squinting at the carvings. Looks like gibberish, Sam muttered. No, Riley whispered, tracing the lines with her finger. It's a language. An old one. Jake slammed the pump handle back into place. Okay, we're good. Let's go. As they turned back toward the RV, Olivia froze. Her stomach twisted. The same symbols were now carved into the side of their RV. Deep. Jagged. Fresh. Riley gasped. That wasn't there before. Sam's smirk faded. Are you sure? Jake ran a hand over the carvings. Warm. His throat went dry. Let's get the hell out of here. The gas station attendant watched them in silence as they scrambled into the RV. Just as Jake turned the key in the ignition, the man finally spoke. His voice was flat, empty. You shouldn't have stopped here. The RV's headlights flickered. The radio turned on by itself, a low static hum filling the cabin. Then, from the speakers, a distorted voice whispered, He's coming. The RV's tires skidded against the gravel as Jake gunned it onto the highway. The neon open sign behind them sputtered before cutting out completely, leaving the gas station swallowed in darkness. What the hell was that? Riley shouted, twisting in her seat to look back. The gas station was gone, not fading into the distance, not obscured by fog, just gone. Jake tightened his grip on the wheel. No one say a damn word until we're far away from here. Ava stared down at her arm, her breath catching. More carvings were appearing, this time on her skin. The radio crackled again. The same voice, just a whisper. You can't outrun him. The RV speeds away, but the carvings remain, changing, growing. Something was marked at that gas station, and now, it's following them. This sets up, too. Setting the scene, building atmosphere. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. Story number 2. The RV sped down the deserted highway, its headlights slicing through the thick, suffocating darkness. The road ahead stretched infinitely, a never-ending strip of cracked asphalt with no signs, no markers, no hint of civilization. Inside the vehicle, the air was heavy, thick with an unnatural tension. Something had changed since they left the gas station. Jake gripped the wheel with white-knuckled intensity, his jaw clenched. Olivia sat stiffly beside him, eyes darting nervously to the rearview mirror. Riley rubbed her arms, shivering despite the warmth in the RV. Sam, usually the jokester, hadn't spoken in minutes. The silence was unnatural, oppressive. The world outside the RV wasn't just dark, it was wrong. The moon was absent, and the stars seemed too far away, like pinpricks barely breaking through an endless void. The headlights should have illuminated trees, road signs, maybe even the occasional roadside post, but instead, they revealed only shifting shadows. "Are we sure we're still on the same road?" Olivia finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake didn't answer immediately. He glanced at the GPS. It was blank. His stomach twisted. "I don't know." Riley pulled out her phone, but the screen flickered violently before shutting off completely. "Okay, that's not normal." "None of this is normal," Sam muttered. He traced a finger over the deep carvings on the RV's inner wall, symbols that hadn't been there before. They weren't just scratched into the surface anymore. They were growing. The longer he looked, the deeper they seemed to etch into the metal, as though something inside the RV was still carving them. Olivia yanked her sleeve up. The scratches on her skin had multiplied. "It's getting worse," she whispered. The radio crackled. Static, faint at first, then louder, as if someone were trying to tune into a station that didn't exist. Jake's grip tightened on the wheel. "I don't like this." Then came the knocking. Soft, deliberate. Riley's breath hitched. "Tell me you heard that." The knocking came again, this time from the roof. Sam bolted upright. "We're moving at 70 miles an hour. What the hell could be knocking on the roof?" No one answered, because they all knew something was out there. Up ahead, a flickering glow broke the horizon. Relief flooded Jake's chest. Another gas station. "We need to stop," Olivia said urgently. "Something is happening to the RV. To us." As they pulled closer, Riley squinted at the sign. "Mel Stop and Dine." Her stomach turned. Wait, wasn't that the name of the station we just left? The same neon open sign flickered weakly above the door. The same rusted pumps stood motionless in the dim glow. And behind the counter, through the dust-coated window, the same attendant watched them. Unblinking. Waiting. The radio static grew louder, shifting, warping. Then, a voice, barely more than a whisper, crawled through the speakers. "You never left." The headlights cut out. The RV died. And in the stillness, something scraped against the windows. They should have left the gas station behind, but it's still there, waiting. Watching. The symbols are growing, the whispers are louder, and the thing on the roof is getting closer. This sets up 3. Rising tension, suspense begins. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The RV sat motionless in the dim glow of the gas station's flickering neon sign. Jake's pulse hammered against his ribs as he twisted the key in the ignition again. Click. Click. Nothing. "Try again," Olivia urged, her voice tight with fear. Jake swallowed hard and turned the key once more. The engine refused to turn over. A slow chill crawled up Riley's spine. Why does it feel like something doesn't want us to leave? No one answered, because they were all thinking the same thing. Outside, the gas station was eerily still. The attendant inside remained frozen, his sunken eyes fixed on them through the grime-coated window. "Why isn't he moving?" Sam whispered, watching him with a growing sense of dread. Then, the neon light above the door flickered violently before cutting out completely, plunging everything into deep darkness. And from that darkness, a shape shifted. A slow, deliberate movement just outside the glow of the RV's headlights. A sudden scraping sound filled the air, long and deliberate, dragging against the RV's exterior. Olivia clapped a hand over her mouth. Tell me that was the wind. But they all knew better. The symbols carved into the RV's side began to pulse. Jake reached out, his hand trembling, to touch one of them. It was hot, burning. The radio crackled, the static warping, twisting. Then, a voice. Soft, ragged, wrong. You're already here. The words sent a bolt of terror through Olivia's chest. What does that mean? Riley reached for the volume knob, but the radio shut off on its own. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then came the knocking. Slow, rhythmic, from the roof. Move. Jake barked, scrambling for the keys again, but the RV wouldn't start. The knocking above them turned into a low, dragging sound. Like something was crawling. Something big. The roof creaked under the weight. Something was up there, watching, waiting. Sam, trembling, turned to look back at the gas station. The attendant was gone, but the door to the station had swung open, revealing only pitch-black emptiness inside. And then, a figure stepped out. It wasn't the attendant. It wasn't human at all. The travelers are now completely trapped. Something has marked them. Something is inside the RV, and something is coming from the gas station. This sets up for climactic revelation, the mystery unfolds. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The RV trembled as the weight above shifted. The thing on the roof dragged its claws along the metal, the sickening screech reverberating through the cabin. Jake gritted his teeth, his grip tight on the useless keys. Someone tell me what the hell is going on. Riley, hands shaking, flipped through her phone's camera roll. Her breath caught in her throat. The photos from earlier, of the gas station, of them filling up the tank, were gone. Every image replaced by the same symbols carved into the RV. Olivia grabbed Riley's arm. Look at them. Look closer. Riley zoomed in on one of the symbols. The lines weren't just markings, they formed letters. Words. You belong here. Sam's voice was barely a whisper. The gas station, it wasn't a stop. It was a trap. We were never supposed to leave. Jake's stomach lurched as the knocking turned into pounding. Whatever was up there was growing impatient. Then the attendant's voice crackled through the dead radio. You should have stayed inside. The cabin lights flickered. For a split second, the windshield reflected something that wasn't them inside the RV. Figures. Distorted. Stretched. Twisted. Riley turned to the window and gasped. The gas station was still outside. But it wasn't the same. The walls were rotted, collapsed inward, covered in overgrown vines. The neon open sign barely flickered, its letters corroded, as if the place had been abandoned for decades. The realization hit Olivia like ice in her veins. We never left that place. We've been here the whole time. The thing on the roof slammed a fist down. The RV rocked violently. Jake yelled, trying the ignition again. Nothing. Sam pressed himself against the back door. His breath hitched as the glass fogged over from the outside. Then came the first whisper. Low. Raspy. Come back inside. A face pressed against the window. A face that looked just like his. They finally understand the truth. They never escaped. The gas station has trapped them in its own reality, and the creatures outside are themselves. Now they must make a choice. Fight to break the cycle, or become part of the station's endless loop. This sets up 5. Climax, high-stakes action. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The RV shook violently, the weight above shifting as the pounding intensified. The creatures outside, their twisted reflections, were no longer content watching. They were coming inside. Jake twisted the key in the ignition one last time. Nothing. The voice from the radio returned, deeper now, almost amused. Come back inside. The door is still open. Glass shattered. A long, clawed hand punched through the passenger side window, grabbing for Olivia. She screamed, scrambling back as Riley swung a wrench, slamming it against the wrist of the invading limb. The hand snapped back, but the fingers lingered too long, as if testing the air. The wound on the arm oozed black, tar-like liquid instead of blood. Then the roof caved inward. The weight was too much. Something massive was trying to break in from above. Through the windshield, the gas station remained exactly where it was. No matter how far they thought they had driven, they had never really left. Sam wiped condensation from the window, and his own face stared back at him from outside. His duplicate grinned. Jake saw it too, and rage overtook fear. We're not dying in here. Riley flipped open the glove compartment, frantically searching for something, anything, that could help. Her fingers closed around a lighter and a can of WD-40. If we can't drive out, she said, breathing hard, we burn this place down. Jake looked at her, wide-eyed. You want to set an explosion while we're still inside? She glared at him. You got a better idea? Olivia didn't hesitate. She grabbed the canister, yanked off the cap, and started spraying the carvings that lined the RV's walls. The symbols hissed, as if reacting to the chemical. The creatures outside screamed. Jake threw the driver's door open, lunging out with a flare gun they had packed for emergencies. His duplicate was waiting for him, but it didn't attack. It just tilted its head, smiling. You don't belong out there, the copy of him whispered. You belong here. Jake fired. The flare hit the gas pumps. Flames erupted instantly, consuming the air with a roaring explosion. The fire spread unnaturally fast, licking across the pavement toward the gas station, engulfing the abandoned structure in an inferno. The flames touched the open sign, and suddenly everything changed. The creatures let out inhuman shrieks, their forms melting into shadows, dragged back into the collapsing gas station as though it were swallowing them whole. The RV's engine roared to life on its own. Jake jumped inside, slammed the door, and hit the gas. The last thing they saw in the rearview mirror was the gas station imploding into itself, the neon light flickering one last time before winking out. They drove. The road was suddenly normal. The night sky stretched above them, full of stars again. Riley clutched her chest. "Are we out?" No one answered. No one dared. Sam turned, staring at the walls of the RV. The symbols were gone. They had escaped. Hadn't they? The nightmare seems over, but is it? The gas station is gone. The road is normal, but something feels wrong. This sets up 6. Resolution, lingering mystery. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The RV rumbled down the highway, the flames from the gas station long behind them, swallowed by the darkness of the open road. No one spoke. No one dared. Jake kept his eyes fixed ahead, hands clenching the wheel as if letting go would bring everything rushing back. The road felt different now. It looked normal, familiar, but there was something hollow about it. "We should be close to a town by now," Riley murmured, checking her phone. Still no signal. Olivia let out a shaky breath. Maybe it takes time for everything to go back to normal. Sam, sitting in the back, didn't respond. He was staring at the walls of the RV. The symbols were gone. As they drove, the air inside the RV felt heavier. Olivia ran her hands along her arms, shivering. "It's warm outside. Why is it so cold in here?" Jake turned up the heater, but the air that blew through the vents was frigid. Riley frowned. "Wait, we had almost a full tank when we left that place, right?" Jake nodded. "Yeah. Why?" She pointed at the dashboard. The fuel gauge was dropping. Fast. Just ahead, a rest stop appeared. A single flickering streetlight buzzed, casting a sickly yellow glow over the empty lot. A vending machine stood just outside the bathrooms, its glass cracked, the snacks inside decades old. "This wasn't on the map," Olivia whispered. "Doesn't matter," Jake muttered. "We're stopping. We need gas." They pulled in, the tires crunching against loose gravel. Jake and Riley got out, the air unnaturally still. Olivia hesitated before following. Sam didn't move. He hadn't spoken since they left the gas station. Jake grabbed the pump, swiping his card. The screen flickered before displaying a balance of $0. The nozzle was already in his hand. "That's not possible," he whispered. "Guys," Riley called from the vending machine. She pointed at the rusted frame. Carved into the metal was a symbol. The same symbols from the gas station. Inside the RV, Olivia turned to Sam. "You good? You've been quiet." Sam didn't respond. He sat rigidly in his seat, his face pale, his breathing shallow. "Sam." Slowly, he turned his head toward her. His eyes were completely black. Olivia's scream pierced the silence. Jake and Riley sprinted back to the RV. Olivia was pressed against the back wall, eyes wide with terror. Sam was still in his seat, staring ahead, whispering something in a voice that wasn't his. Jake grabbed Olivia, pulling her toward the door. "Out. Now." As soon as their feet hit the pavement, the RV engine roared to life on its own. The headlights flared, illuminating something standing at the edge of the lot. The gas station attendant. Smiling. The RV's tires screeched as it lurched forward, speeding into the darkness. Inside, Sam was still sitting there, still whispering, still staring. Then just as suddenly, the RV was gone, as if it had never been there at all. Jake, Olivia, and Riley stood in stunned silence, the night swallowing their breath. Behind them, the vending machine's screen flickered to life. One word glowed on the dusty display. "Welcome." The wind carried a distant voice, distorted through static. "You never left." Then, darkness. This resolution, lingering mystery, cements gas station ghoul as a terrifying, reality-warping horror story that never truly ends. Let me know if you'd like refinements, or if you're ready for the next nightmare. Story number 4. The road stretched endlessly before them, a winding ribbon of asphalt disappearing into the horizon. The sun had just dipped below the treeline, casting the sky in hues of burnt orange and deep indigo. The RV's headlights flickered on automatically as Daniel tightened his grip on the wheel. "Feels good, doesn't it?" Claire murmured from the passenger seat, gazing out at the empty highway. No deadlines, no responsibilities. Just the open road. Mason, sprawled across the back seat with his feet propped up, smirked. "Yeah, except we're basically in a rolling tin can that smells like an old basement." Ava wrinkled her nose. "Seriously, what is that smell? It's like mildew and something else." Daniel chuckled. "What do you expect? The guy who sold me this thing looked like he hadn't cleaned it since the 80s. "Yeah, well, maybe he should have warned us about the creepy-ass carvings in the cabinets," Mason added, running his fingers over a faint, scratched symbol just above the kitchenette. "What do you think it means?" Claire leaned over to look. Looks old. Maybe the last owner was just some weirdo. Ava shivered. Or maybe it's a warning. No one responded to that. Daniel flipped on the radio to break the silence. Static filled the cabin, crackling like distant whispers. He twisted the dial. Nothing but static. That's weird, he muttered, tapping the screen. The digital interface glitched for a moment before the static shifted. A voice, faint, distorted, came through the speakers. Do you remember? Daniel frowned. What the hell? The others froze. Did that just talk to us? Ava whispered. Mason leaned forward. Okay, tell me that was just some weird radio station. Daniel turned the dial again. The static faded, the radio dead silent. No stations. No music. Nothing. Maybe it's just busted, Claire said, but her voice lacked conviction. Ava hugged herself. I don't like this. The RV rumbled over a pothole, shaking its contents. Mason reached up to adjust the rearview mirror and froze. Guys, who's sitting in the back? Ava turned, following his gaze. What are you talking about? It's just us. Mason's face paled. No, I swear, I saw someone. Sitting right there. Claire peered into the mirror. The reflection showed the four of them, but for a split second, there was a fifth shape. A dark figure, blurred and wrong, sitting motionless in the farthest seat. And then, it was gone. Ava shuddered. I don't like this. We just got this thing, and it's already creeping me out. We're all just tired, Daniel said, forcing a laugh. Let's find a place to pull over for the night. The others nodded, eager to shake off the unease. The RV rumbled forward, carrying them deeper into the dark. From the ceiling vent, a whisper curled through the cabin, so quiet it barely existed. You never left. The RV is more than just an old vehicle, it remembers. And something inside it isn't just watching, it's waiting. This sets up, too. Setting the scene, building atmosphere. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The RV rolled down an empty stretch of road, swallowed by the ever-deepening night. The air outside was thick with fog, curling around the headlights in ghostly tendrils. Inside, the cabin was unnervingly still, save for the low hum of the engine and the occasional creak of shifting metal. Ava pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders. Is it just me, or does it feel colder in here? Daniel checked the dashboard. Thermostat's fine. Maybe we've got a draft somewhere. Mason scoffed. Or maybe your haunted-ass RV is giving us the chills. No one laughed. Outside, the road stretched into infinity, marked only by the occasional milepost. No houses. No gas stations. Just miles of dark highway with nothing but the RV's own headlights to confirm they were still moving. Claire tapped her phone's screen. No signal. We should have hit a town by now, she muttered. We've been driving for hours. Where the hell are we? Daniel tightened his grip on the wheel. I don't know. GPS keeps rerouting. It's like it doesn't know where we are either. The words settled uneasily between them. Ava leaned against the kitchenette, frowning at the cabinets. The odd scratches Mason had pointed out earlier seemed deeper now, as if the wood had continued carving itself. She reached out and ran her fingers over them. Warm. Too warm. A whisper, so faint she almost convinced herself she imagined it, brushed against her ear. Let me out. Ava yanked her hand back. Did you hear that? Mason and Claire turned. Hear what? Claire asked. Ava swallowed. Nothing. Never mind. A sudden stench filled the air, rotting wood, damp earth, something almost decayed. Mason gagged. Jesus, what is that? Daniel wrinkled his nose. Smells like something crawled under the floorboards and died. Claire covered her mouth. Maybe something did. Maybe this thing has a nest of rats or something. Ava shook her head. No, it's different. It's coming from the vents. They fell silent, listening. And then, the whispering started again. At first, the whispers blended with the wind outside, barely distinguishable. But then one voice rose above the others, low, rasping, unmistakably human. You never left. The lights flickered. The engine coughed, nearly dying before roaring back to life. Daniel clenched the wheel. Okay, that's it. We're stopping. Mason let out a humorless laugh. And go where? Have you looked outside? There's nowhere to stop. Daniel glanced at the gas gauge. Nearly empty. A flickering glow appeared ahead, barely cutting through the fog. A gas station, old and forgotten, sitting alone at the roadside. Finally, Daniel exhaled. We'll stop here. But as they pulled in, Ava gripped his arm. Wait. Her voice trembled. That's the same gas station we passed hours ago. The RV is not just a vehicle. It's a cage, a shifting entity pulling them deeper into something unnatural. And now, time itself is breaking. This sets up 3. Rising tension, suspense begins. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The RV sat idling in front of the gas station, its headlights casting long, eerie shadows across the cracked pavement. The old neon sign above the station flickered erratically, buzzing like a dying insect. No one moved. No one spoke. Ava's hand was still gripping Daniel's arm, her nails pressing into his skin. "I told you," she whispered. "We've been here before." Daniel's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. "That's impossible. We've been driving for hours." Mason looked outside. The gas station felt wrong, like it wasn't truly there. The windows were dark, but something moved inside. Claire leaned forward. "We need gas. We have to stop." Daniel hesitated before nodding. "All right, but be quick." Mason stepped out first. The second his foot hit the pavement, the night shifted. The air grew thicker, heavier, wrong. The gas station door creaked open on its own. Inside, the shelves were lined with dust-covered goods. Expired cans, torn bags of chips. A single, ancient cash register sat untouched, its drawer slightly ajar. A faded map hung on the wall, curling at the edges. Mason took a step closer. The map showed their exact route. Except, there was no road leading out. Back in the RV, Ava and Claire sat in silence, waiting for the others to return. Then, the floor shifted. Claire gasped. "Did you feel that?" Ava nodded, swallowing hard. Like it moved. The radio crackled to life. Static. And then, the same voice from before, low, distorted. "Do you remember?" Claire lunged for the dial, twisting it frantically. "Turn off." But the voice kept speaking. "It remembers you." The RV lurched. The lights flickered. The scratches on the walls deepened, spreading. Mason sprinted back from the gas station, breath ragged. "We have to go. Now." Daniel didn't ask questions. He jumped into the driver's seat and threw the RV into reverse. The tires squealed against the pavement. "What did you see?" Ava asked, her voice shaking. Mason shook his head. "The map. We're not supposed to leave." The RV sped down the highway. The gas station disappeared behind them, but the scratches on the walls continued to spread. The whispers in the vents grew louder. Ava turned to Claire, her face pale. "I don't think we're the ones driving anymore. The RV is changing. It's alive. It's remembering. And now it's taking control." This sets up for climactic revelation. The mystery unfolds. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The RV rumbled violently, as if something underneath its metal frame was shifting, stretching. The air inside had thickened, heavy with the scent of damp wood and something metallic. Blood? Daniel gripped the wheel, his knuckles white. "Something is wrong. I can't control it anymore." Ava gasped. "What do you mean?" The dashboard lights flickered, and for the briefest second, the screen showed something impossible. Not a speedometer, not fuel levels. A pulse, a beating rhythmic pulse. The RV was alive. Mason turned in his seat, staring at the walls of the RV. The scratches had grown deeper, the symbols twisting into grotesque shapes. They were moving. A voice, low, guttural, ancient, whispered from the vents. "You are inside me now." The ceiling groaned. The walls pulsed like lungs inhaling. Claire screamed. "It's feeding off us. Our memories." The windows warped, reflecting distorted images, versions of themselves that were wrong. Daniel's own reflection smirked at him, though he hadn't moved. A sudden thud came from the back of the RV. Mason's breath hitched. "We're the only ones here, right?" Ava stood slowly, dread crawling up her spine. She stepped toward the hallway leading to the sleeping quarters. Another thud. She swallowed hard, reaching for the door. It swung open on its own. Inside the darkened space, someone was sitting on the bed. No, someone's. Figures half-formed, trapped in a never-ending loop of silent screams. Faces twisted in agony, mouths opening and closing, but making no sound. Their eyes locked onto Ava. One of them was wearing her jacket. Daniel slammed on the brakes. "We have to get out of here." But the RV didn't stop. It sped up. The vents breathed around them. The overhead compartments rattled, bursting open to reveal old, rotting belongings. Items that weren't theirs. Mason pulled a faded photograph from a compartment. A group of 4, sitting in this very RV. Their faces blurred. Ava gasped. "It's been feeding for years. It keeps them." Claire turned pale. "We were never supposed to leave." We were replacements. The RV let out a deep, shuddering groan. And then the voice whispered, "You will stay." The horrifying truth is revealed. The RV doesn't just trap its passengers, it consumes their identities, replacing them with new victims. Now they must make a choice: fight the entity or become part of it forever. This sets up 5. Climax, high-stakes action. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The RV lurched violently, the engine roaring as if it had a mind of its own. The windows darkened, sealing them inside like a coffin. The vents exhaled a thick, damp air, and the walls pulsed like living flesh. Daniel gritted his teeth, yanking at the steering wheel. It won't stop. It's controlling itself. Ava clutched the seat, her nails digging into the fabric. It's not just controlling itself, it's trying to keep us inside. Mason slammed his fists against the door. There has to be a way out. We can't let it take us. From the depths of the RV, something stirred. The radio crackled to life, the voice now clear, powerful. "You are part of me now." The walls bulged, pressing inward. The lights flickered violently, casting shadows that twisted and moved on their own. Claire screamed as a shadowy figure peeled itself from the wall, its face contorted in silent agony. A past victim. It reached for her, its fingers stretching unnaturally long. "No!" Claire shrieked, shoving back. The figure's touch left a burning imprint of a symbol on her skin. Daniel's heart pounded. "If this thing is alive, we have to kill it." Mason's eyes darted around. "How?" "It's a goddamn RV." Ava grabbed the faded photograph they found earlier, the one with the previous passengers. "They tried to leave, and they didn't make it. But we know something they didn't." She pointed at the dashboard, where the pulse-like rhythm still throbbed. "That's its heart." The RV screeched as the entity retaliated, slamming them from side to side. Claire grabbed a fire extinguisher and swung it at the walls, cracking the surface. A horrific screech echoed through the vehicle as dark liquid bled from the cracks. Daniel lunged for the dashboard, smashing his fist into the pulsating screen. The RV howled. Ava grabbed a crowbar and drove it into the floorboards, piercing something soft beneath. The walls convulsed, throwing them off balance. "It's working!" Mason yelled. "Hit it harder!" The RV shuddered violently, the dashboard sparking as the pulse weakened. The shadowy figures screamed, their forms dissolving as the entity began to die. Daniel wrenched the wheel, forcing the RV off the road. It barreled toward a ravine. "Jump!" he roared. One by one, they leapt from the RV, hitting the dirt just as it plunged into the abyss. For a moment, the night was silent. Then, a horrific, deafening screech erupted from below, shaking the ground. The entity was dying. The RV crumpled inward, folding like a living thing retreating into itself. And then it was gone. The nightmare should be over. But as they stare into the abyss where the RV vanished, a single pulse still echoes in the air. This sets up 6. Resolution, lingering mystery. Let me know if you'd like refinements before we continue. The night was still. The 4 of them lay sprawled in the dirt, breathless, bruised, and shaken. Daniel coughed, forcing himself to sit up. The dust from the wreck settled in the air, illuminated only by the pale light of the moon. Mason was the first to look over the edge of the ravine. His pulse pounded in his ears. "It's gone. The RV, it's just gone." Claire staggered to her feet. "Are we sure?" Her voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. It felt like it didn't want to let us go. Ava wiped her face, shaking. "No, it didn't want to let us go. It wanted to keep us." The wind whistled through the trees, eerily silent save for the occasional rustle of leaves. The entity was gone, or so it seemed. Daniel glanced at his arm and froze. His sleeve was ripped, revealing an etched symbol burned into his skin. The same symbols that had covered the walls of the RV. "Guys, look at this." Claire gasped, rolling up her own sleeve. The markings were still there, faint but present. "We got out, but it still left something on us," Mason muttered, staring at the marks on his wrist. "What does that mean?" Ava took a shaky breath. "I don't think it's over." A metallic groan rumbled through the night, distant yet familiar. They turned toward the horizon, their hearts hammering. A few hundred feet away, the road stretched into darkness, empty. But was it? Then, ever so faintly, headlights flickered. Ava took a step back. "No, that's not possible." The glow of the lights pulsed slowly, almost like breathing. "We destroyed it," Mason shouted. "We saw it collapse." Claire grabbed his arm, her grip ice cold. "Did we? Or did we just wake it up?" The wind picked up, carrying a familiar sound, a low, rhythmic hum. The same sound the RV made when it idled. Daniel's blood ran cold. We need to go. Now. As they stumbled toward the tree line, the radio in Daniel's pocket crackled to life. Static. Then a whisper. You never left. The group froze. The same words the entity had whispered in the RV. The headlights in the distance flared brighter. And then, the sound of an engine roared to life. They ran. Branches snapped beneath their feet as they sprinted through the forest, the sound of the unseen RV growing louder behind them. Claire choked on a sob. It's following us. Daniel didn't look back. He didn't dare. We have to keep moving. Ava's breath hitched. What if we can't outrun it? The wind carried one last whisper. You belong to me now. The screen fades to black. Somewhere, deep in the night, an unseen vehicle hums steadily, waiting. The road never ends. This resolution, lingering mystery, cements the roaming entity as a terrifying, reality-warping horror story that never truly ends. Let me know if you'd like refinements, or if you're ready for the next nightmare.